What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. 7-7 Patriots with a Christmas Eve game against the Cincinnati Bengals. And while the product has been a little less than in the last few weeks and their opportunities for a playoff berth seem bleak, Dietrich Weiss is hearing none of it. This sound from Dietrich is brought to you by Shaw's, perfecting the art of fresh.
Bottom line is, no matter what is being said outside the locker room, within the locker room, we're all speaking the same language. And that's win, honestly. No matter what game you're in, Super Bowl game, first game of the season, you must rely on your fundamentals and techniques to make plays happen. That's what it is. I don't care how lucky the play is. Preparation pretty much makes confidence. The more someone prepares for a game, the more confident someone is. The more someone practice their techniques over and over again, any situation that person's in, they're confident to achieve what they're supposed to achieve.
Obviously, the biggest part of going forward isn't just executing on the field, it's having all the oars being pulled at the same time in the same direction. That really hasn't existed in a lot of games when the Patriots have ended up on the shy end of the score. So we're going to get into that and the tenor of the team as it slides into the final 3 games of its season. Here comes Phil Perry and Matt Cassel. There's Phil and there's Matt Cassel, former NFL quarterback, and Phil, longtime scribe here on the Patriots beat along with me and so many others. Matt!
Yes?
How does a team flush a loss like Sunday's against the Raiders, which wasn't just embarrassing, but also damaging to their psyche as a team and a unit and their playoff hopes?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things to unravel right there, and it's difficult. You know, when you have a loss like that in the fashion in which they lost the game, it's hard to come in on Monday. But I'll say this. Most NFL players, they've been conditioned to deal with adversity throughout their career, right? You usually don't get to the NFL without going through some sort of adversity, some setbacks, some losses, whether it's high school, whether it's college, and now in the NFL on the biggest stage. So you're conditioned to deal with it. At the same time, I think certain players probably have a tougher time just in terms of their role in that final play and that mistake that it made that cost their team. You're your own worst critic at times as a player. And so Ramondre, Jacoby, those guys probably are having a little bit tougher time getting through it, but that's also the beauty and the biggest part of the Patriots program. What Bill Belichick does is there's a routine week in and week out. We come in on Mondays, as difficult as it is to review that film, to watch some of those plays. You're going to sit there, digest it, make the corrections, and then you're moving on. And you hear him say it, but that's truly what that culture is in the environment. You've got to move on. You've got to be able to turn the page and have that mental fortitude to just move on to the next opponent and start to hone in on what we need to do to win this week. And that's just what the NFL is. And they do a really good job of that, of helping you compartmentalize that game, but then move forward to the next.
Phil, do you think the defense is in a position where, man, we just put together an incredible second half? Yeah, we had a touchdown, controversially called a touchdown on us, but this is getting ridiculous with the lack of support. I mean, that's a danger as well, I would think.
Oh, I think they've been there for some time. Just the understanding that they're going to have to do a lot to win games. And the special teams has to chip in and make positive contributions as well. But I think this is where they've been for some time now, is it's just not a complimentary football team. And we know that's what Bill Belichick wants. We know anytime he has the opportunity to laud his team for being complimentary, he will. They just don't have the ability to do that right now. So it's defense, it's special teams, and hope that's enough. And unfortunately for them, Tom, not only this week against the Bengals, but the next 3 weeks against really good teams, defense and special teams probably not going to be enough.
Thanks for bringing the Christmas cheer there with your Tannenbaum. Is that real?
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. We'll see how long it lasts. We'll see if it lasts to Christmas. I left for a week. I was in Arizona for a week. I don't think a single person in the household watered this thing while I was gone. So
we'll
see how it goes. It looks good. It looks good.
Now, is that a star or an angel up top? What do you got?
We go with the star. Yep. I had the opportunity to make it a colored star. It's a very it's you could do different colors. You could do flashing lights, but I figured we'd try to take it easy on the people's senses for the show today and just keep it standard with the traditional yellow look up there.
Yeah, we don't want to put out a warning for seizures or anything like that with the flashing lights. Phil, were you surprised at Mac's answers to the questions that I posed to him? don't have to go through them all, but basically saying, hey, when it looks like when you're waving and gesticulating at the sideline, it looks like you're blaming the coaches. Do you have to worry about that or guard against that? He didn't back down one iota, did he, Phil?
He didn't. And it surprised me a little bit, but what it tells me is that he's not really hearing from people behind the scenes to tell him to cut it out. And so what does that mean? Does that mean, Bill Belichick hasn't talked to him about it yet, which would surprise me a little bit? Does it mean his teammates are okay with it? Because we've heard from some other players lately, and Cassel, I think, was really first on this, that it's starting to get a little old, former Patriots saying that. But I'm just wondering if everybody in the building is kind of okay with it, because if they weren't, wouldn't they have said something to him about it by now?
How's it feel to be the groundbreaker there, Matt? I mean, you were right out of the chutes with the cut the crap stuff, and now everybody wants to be on Cassel's side.
At some point, does that just become old for teammates when
Yes,
Mac Jones?
I'm tired of that. Honestly, I'm tired of it. You're the leader of the team. You're a quarterback, so you can't be frustrated every single week, every single play. I don't care if you're getting a play call in late or whatever it may be. At the end of the day, you have to show some poise, because you operate the ship. You're the head of the ship when you're out there, and then you got your teammates looking at you every week and every play, and every other play is this, that, and other. Hey, control what you can control. That's all you can do. But I'm tired of seeing them, throwing fit in the attention trap. At this point, we get it. We get it, because at the end of the day, everybody's not playing the way they're capable of playing. That's just what it is. Everybody, including him. So I'm not just going to all throw it on him, but at this point, I'm tired of seeing it. I think a lot of other people's tired of seeing it. I'm here to say it. We're tired of seeing it.
Well, it's just interesting because I said you just can't make it a routine. You can't make it a habit where week in and week out, you're the focal point of everything that's going wrong. You're showing that emotion, and you're becoming this guy that doesn't look like he's got the composure and the poise that you need to be the leader of the team. However, I know that he's a competitor, and we've seen it throughout even last year. Look, he's a fiery guy, and I get that. But at times you've got to somehow find a way to reel that in a little bit and just say, look, we got to go out and do our job. And when you do that, and also you don't play well, that's when a lot of people come out of the woodworks and start getting on you about it. But at the end of the day, it's interesting because a lot of people aren't commenting about it. It's probably something that they don't want to make a distraction. Bill Belichick, Coach Patricia, those guys are going to come out and just call him out, because again, what good does that do for your team, for your offense already that has a lot of questions to answer week in and week out, just in terms of productivity. So, for Mac Jones, I think it's just about getting back to work and maybe changing that approach a little bit and making sure that you're right on what you need to be right on, because there was too many missed throws in this game for him to be able to go out and just be blaming other people.
You gotta choose actively, I would imagine, as a quarterback who is driven for success and knows that it's going to land on his doorstep when things suck. But you have to choose resilience and poise, I would imagine. You have to choose to be that. You have to choose to be stoic when the poop is hitting the fan.
Right, and that's sometimes the hardest thing, because you want to come out of your shell, and there's times you want to scream on the sideline, you want to yell at a coach, or you want to do that, but it's better to be reserved sometimes and have that composure about yourself is what I'm talking about, because again, it sends the wrong message to the guys. It sends like you're pushing the panic button, panic, rather instead. There's times where you got to hold people accountable. Like, hey, I need you to pick up that block. You got him in protection. I need you to stone him. You can't free release and miss that block because that costs us a third down. That's one thing. That's holding guys accountable. That's getting after people. But again, to come over and make blatant statements like the quick game sucks and we got to throw the ball downfield and all that stuff and make it very vocal in front of everybody, all the wide receivers, well, that's where they're looking at their leader saying, man, well, if he's complaining about all this, then that means that maybe we should be upset about it as well.
And the bigger picture, Phil, is, and I mentioned this on WEEI the other day, but it's okay. Okay, you're not happy with the way the game is being called, which by translation means you're not happy with the coach, which, okay, logically follows that the coach is there for what reason? Because Bill Belichick put him there, and you're dissatisfied with that. There comes a point at which you're saying with your actions to the head coach, the most decorated coach of all time, this is a bad idea by you. He's not working. And I'm going to let everyone know he's not working. Just as Matt said in the first week, give him a little latitude, but it does become a point at which you're showing him up. And I do think that Mac is jumping up and down on some thin ice with continuing to do that, because it can fracture the relationship with Bill, where it says, all right, you know what? It's a little counterproductive. We heard a long time ago, when the Patriots moved on from Lawyer Malloy, there was an internal scouting report on Malloy that he could be a negative leader. He was a leader. Guys respected the hell out of him. But when things weren't going well for Lawyer, he would be vocal about it. He would be vocal about it in the locker room. Look, I'll own this. I could be a bitcher and a moaner too around the office. I think I could be too negative too and bring people with me. Phil's constantly being contradictory to me because I'm being a baby. It's not good. It doesn't help anybody. And I wonder if Bill is starting to scrutinize, hey, you're not good enough, and you're actually taking people with you, and it's defeatist for the entire organization and culture.
But the fact that it's gone on this long tells me that he hasn't done that, and I wonder why. And to me, it takes me down the road of, I think Bill Belichick understands that Mac Jones is a leader, and I think he understands that there is a reason that he's upset. And I think maybe he feels as though if he tries to put a stop to it, or if he calls Mac Jones out in front of the team, that maybe that just doesn't play well.
You're right. But it's diminishing returns. He's going to get the diminishing returns where it starts to infect. You're exactly right. I'm sure Bill realizes what Mike Lombardi, and we'll get to his sound later, says. It's not working. But at some point, you start to stop bitching about the offense and the play calls and start questioning the head coach by your symbolic gestures.
And I think that Bill Belichick is so really focused on maintaining some level of buy-in that's probably the reason that he hasn't nipped this in the bud just yet. Because I do think Mac Jones respects Bill Belichick, and I think their relationship is okay. Now, I don't have a lot of inside information on that, but I have seen them on the road now multiple times over the course of the last few weeks. It wasn't after the Raiders game, but these guys are laughing and joking and hugging, and this is relatively recently. And so again, that's not the full book on anybody's relationship when you see two guys interact, for 30 seconds or a minute at a time. But I think Bill Belichick is really respected by Mac Jones. And I think their relationship, while probably strained just because of the way things are going, I think there's enough mutual respect there that it's not necessarily on the verge of collapsing. I just think Mac Jones, I take him at his word, Tom, to what he said to you. He's just desperate to get some of these details right. And I think it is kind of panic mode to Cassel's point. Like they're week 16 now and they're still missing details. So what else do you do when you've tried all year to get these things right? What levers do you pull? This is the emotional lever is the one that Mac Jones seems to keep reaching for.
Right, Mac. And that's the thing about Mac Jones is it's difficult. Change is always difficult in this league, right? Change from one coordinator to the next, one system to the next. But at some point, you have to accept your circumstances. And now, this far deep in the season, it's like, what can we do to get better week in and week out? And we talk about the details, being coached harder, all these different things that are brought up and conversations that are brought up throughout the course of a week that are being said by some of the players. And there's a boiling point. There's no doubt, as a player who has a high expectation, not only for himself, but as the team, that things aren't going well, that sometimes your emotions take over and you can see it and the frustrations come out and on the field. But there, as I said before, you've got to really guard yourself against showing those frustrations consistently, especially at the quarterback position, because again, everybody's looking at you as being the leader of the offensive unit. You have taken those reins and you've been entitled to that. But at the end of the day, you still have to set the example out there and hopefully give a somewhat of a peace and calmness to that group, even though there's a lot of chaos going on.
All right, we got parallel streets going on here, and I don't want to, for our podcast listeners and viewers, ignore the fact they're playing the Bengals. Phil, Matt, have you guys gotten eyeball deep on the personnel over there, which has got that team at 10-4? Phil first.
Their offense is absolutely dynamic, and Joe Burrow is elite. And one of the reasons I love his game is because he's proving that you can be elite at that position without necessarily being an elite physical specimen, because he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. We know he's not the best athlete in the league relative to a Mahomes or an Allen or a Jalen Hurts. Those three guys probably at the top of the list in terms of MVP voting and things of that nature this year. But He's a special player. And Matt, I think what makes this matchup particularly difficult for the Patriots is that he's special against man coverage. He's second in the NFL in completion percentage. He's third in yards per attempt, and he's fourth in quarterback rating against man coverage this year, according to Sports Info Solutions. The Patriots love to play man coverage, and they're banged up in the secondary. So for all those reasons, this feels like a really, really difficult matchup.
It is difficult, and it starts with the offense. You said it. Joe Burrow, he's top 5 quarterback in this league, probably top 4 quarterback. The way that he's played, the consistency in which he approaches the game. I mean, and then you put together the weapons. I mean, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. They've got the tight end position. Joe Mixon's an understated running back that has been outstanding throughout the course of the year. But P. Ryan has also come in and spilled him, and he's more of a third down back. But the big part about this offense, why they're so much better, is they've got the balance, but then they've also the offensive line. Since the beginning of the season, when they struggled, they've become more of a cohesive group, and they're protecting him. And even last year, with all the success that Joe Burrow had, I mean, he was getting hit constantly, but I think that this offensive line has really come together. And when you talk about man coverage, why are they so good versus man? Well, again, this is a matchup-driven league, and you look at the weapons that he has. I mean, these are elite guys. T. Higgins is a number one in almost any other offense, but then you got Jamar Chase, another number one on the outside, and Tyler Boyd holding down the middle of the field. I mean, they're a matchup nightmare. So I don't expect the Patriots to come out here and play a ton of man coverage, even though that's their DNA, that they'll have to make adjustments, try to make sure that they don't give up the explosive plays and make them go all the way down the field, which is better than just giving up explosive after explosive play if they're man-to-man, because I just don't know if you can match up against an offense like this. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball for the Bengals. They were without Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendricks last week. Both of those guys were out with injuries, and they were still much better in the second half against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where they got out to a 17-point lead, but they created 4 consecutive turnovers on 4 possessions, two INTs, and then 2 strip sacks for fumbles that they recovered, which really set up that comeback. They're good against the run. They're not elite in the secondary by any means, but their front and their second level really work as a cohesive group and marry their coverage with their rush lanes, and they're a good defense.
Hey, it's funny because we heard Bill Belichick talking about Joe Burrow, and I just want to read through his summation of Joe Burrow. And I know Mac Jones is respected by Bill, and I think that going forward, Bill says, yeah, that's our guy. But it's interesting when you hear the summation of Joe Burrow, and does it match with the things that Mac is right now? First of all, he's tough. He's a tough kid. I believe Bill thinks that about Mac. He'll stand in there, throw the ball, and take a hit to make a play. I think he has to believe that about Mac, too. Accurate, hits all the throws. Accurate, yes. Hits all the throws. I don't think so. Tough to tackle. I don't think that's the case. Manages the game well. I don't think that exists right now. Sees the game well. I think it does. Productive in critical situations. No, he hasn't been. Third down, red area, big games. I say he makes a lot of his best plays at the right time when you really need him. He's impressive. He's also in his 3rd year, and he's got some continuity on his offense. Just a little food for thought. Joe Burrow v. Mac Jones as we get ready for this matchup. We'll be back in just a second. Hey, welcome back. Now, for the last few weeks, we've kind of been doing an autopsy on a patient that hasn't even expired yet. At the risk of continuing down that road, but also with a tinge of optimism, I'm going to provide you now with reasons to be optimistic for the Patriots over the final 3 games and heading into 2023. Is it premature to just move on from what's going to happen the next 3 weeks? No. We'll bring the boys in to talk about it. One of the most ear-opening moments we've heard all season came this week when Mike Lombardi, former Patriots executive, longtime FOB friend of Bill, lambasted the Patriots coaching staff and Bill Belichick's decision to put Matt Patricia and Joe Judge in positions of prominence.
There's going to have to be a really hard self-evaluation, and it's going to have to start with the head coach because, they can't throw the ball. I mean, let's just put it out there. They cannot throw the football. This whole Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, it's not working. I mean, what are we in, week 16?
Yeah, entering week 16.
I mean, you want to say Mac Jones sucks, but you watched him last year with Josh McDaniels. He didn't suck, right? So you decide. Just because he coaches defense doesn't mean he can call offensive plays or set up an offense. It's kind of a hard it's not there. And their offensive line execution is so bad. Like the biggest problem is the fundamentals and techniques of their offensive line. They don't have any. I don't think the Patriots are that bad offensively, as bad as they look in terms of their personnel. Remember, I believe this. It's either coaching, scheme, or players, right? There's three things. Players, coaches, or scheme. And I think you got to really be self-critical if you're New England and say, we're just not very well coached on offense and our schemes are not very good.
I like Mike. I've had good conversations with Mike. He's been helpful. I think he knows what he's talking about. But I do say, welcome to the party. I don't know if we have any food left, but it's been a great time here on the it was a terrible mistake celebration. Phil, what's your reaction to that? What does it mean if Mike Lombardi's going to take aim at Bill?
Well, this is somebody who, as you mentioned, is a close friend of Bill Belichick's. We saw them talking for an extremely extended period of time when the Patriots were out in Vegas. Mike Lombardi's son, Mick, is now on the Vegas coaching staff. These guys are close. And so I think for Lombardi to be comfortable to say something like this tells me, again, as somebody who's certainly not looking to sabotage his relationship with Bill Belichick to get a take out there, what it tells me is that Lombardi probably thinks or knows, maybe he's had a recent conversation with Bill Belichick. He probably feels relatively similarly to the way that Lombardi does.
In my experience, it feels like Lombardi might have had a conversation with Bill, and sometimes the way you do the job is you say, hey, I got to do my business here. I'm going to be taking aim. So just FYI. Yeah, I mean, what else can you do? I mean, you got to do your job. It's pretty clear it's not working. And just don't make it personal, which he really didn't. He didn't say anybody's a boob, just said it hasn't worked. Matt, that actually is one of my 5 reasons for optimism in a roundabout way. It's been so bad that it's good. Bill can't pretend that we were this close with how this went this year. So I think that in this story I did for NBCSportsBoston.com, one of the reasons for optimism is that you actually have been pushed out in front of the train and run over. So you have to fix it. Correct? To a degree?
Correct. 100%. I mean, when you look at the way this offense has performed throughout the course of the season, the inconsistency, particularly in normal areas in which they've been a lot better historically at, red zone, third down, all those things, first and second down, the positive yards in the run game, in the pass game, all those things, you have to take a strong look in the mirror and you have to evaluate yourself critically and say, where can we get better? How can we get better? Because again, you can't continue on this path offensively without getting better and more production in order to be successful, particularly even within your division, right? With the Bills being as good as they are, the Miami Dolphins with the weapons that they have, and also where they've gone from last year to this year, the Jets also getting better and having a good defense. So it's going to be one of those situations that when you get to the offseason, you're going to have to revamp it in whatever capacity that is, whether it's play caller, whether it's players, and you have to face the music and say, look, if we're going to be able to compete in this division, it all is going to have to start with the offense, because defensively, yes, there are still some holes there every now and then, but this is a solid defense. They've got good special teams. The thing that's holding this team back right now is offense.
Team is 7-7, Phil. And that was one of my other points. The pieces are absolutely here. The names I used defensively first were, Matt Judon, Josh Uche, Christian Barmore, Dietrich Wise, Kyle Duggar, Marcus Jones, Jack Jones. I could throw Bentley in there. We could throw plenty others in there. And on offense, they're okay on the interior offensive line. Strange is going to be fine. David Andrews is more than fine. And so is Mike Onwenu, he told me. Punishing running backs, at the very worst, average quarterback, a tight end who can produce, another one who ought to, and you have a wide receiver in-house with an expiring contract, Jacoby Myers, who knows the system and could be useful to you and probably shouldn't have to break the bank to keep him. So there are pieces in place, and that's a large part of the reason they're 7-7 despite all of our autopsies.
No doubt. I would look at that offensive side, though, and say 2 of the 3 most important positions on offense are real question marks. I'm not even including the quarterback spot there, and I'm sure there are others who would say, that's a question mark, Phil. I don't think so. I think he can play. I think with a different coaching staff, it would look a lot different this year. But when you look at the receiver spot and the tackle spot, there's a reason those positions get paid as much as they do these days. And I don't know what they have for 2023. Tyquan Thornton, you hope, can play his 17 catches all year. You know, he really
Aguilar's
hasn't done.
gone.
Aguilar's out. Jacoby Myers might be out, Tom. He's a free agent. You know, that maybe there's a team out there that's willing to pay him more than the Patriots are to keep him around.
And
you know, Kendrick Bourne, what do you have? He played 11 snaps last week against the Raiders when you could have used some offense. Devontae Parker's still under contract, so I imagine he'll be part of the mix as sort of that 50-50 down the field type of guy. But then the two tackle spots are real questions too. So they've got a lot of work to do this offseason personnel-wise to improve the offense, you know, and that's not even factoring in what you have to do with the coaching staff.
Fortunately, they have $56 million in cap space. It is a lean wide receiver crop out there. Nelson Aguilar is kind of actually rated near the top in terms of current salary as a guy who's hitting free agency. If you want to use that as a measure of how accomplished guys are, you don't have to. But it's Juju Smith-Schuster's and Jacoby Myers, and probably to me would be the best. DJ Chark is another one. But they have $56 million, which is fourth highest in the NFL. Matt, if you want to do business, you got to trade like the Raiders did for Devontae Adams and the Dolphins did for Tyreek Hill, and you have to spend on the offensive line because Mac Jones needs airtight protection if you want to wring anything from this offense.
Yeah, and when you look at this offense, that's what Phil was talking about. The tackle position has been probably the most inconsistent, and it's the most important position on the offensive line because these are these stud bookends that are going to come rush, and the type of offense that they run and the style in which Mac Jones is accustomed to playing is within the pocket. So you have to give him a secure pocket of protection, and it starts with those tackles. They need more consistent play there. But in addition to that, you look at their last so many opponents, whether it's Justin Jefferson, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, you got Adams out there last week. These guys are true number one wide receivers. So finding a way to bring that presence on the outside where you get this run game going, because I believe that they can run the football at will at times, but then having a good number one out there that says, look, they want to load the box. They want to put, an extra safety in. We have a guy out there that I trust that I'll go to, and we'll wear him out on the outside, force him into too high coverage. And then you get that balancing act with the offense because it's always a chess match, right? You want to go too high defense. If you can stop the run with your front seven, well, that's good. You're going to make it more difficult because you can put more guys into coverage. But when you start to get really good, it's when you can run the ball successfully, bring another guy down the box, and have guys on the outside that can go your one-on-one matchups and then break the spirit of that defense. And that's where they've got to get to. And those are the two major areas of concern. Get a number one wide receiver and competent tackles in there that are going to be able to play week in and week out.
It's funny. It's almost a whatever it takes because honest to God, you do those three things, fix the tackles, get a wideout who strikes fear, or make sure that wideout room is still at the very least as talented as it is this year, possibly more. People might disagree with me, and get a play caller. Matt, before we let it go here, can you hold that hat up to the light a little bit? I need to know what that logo is.
This logo was when I went fly fishing, and it says "Never skunked fly fishing." The best part about it was the day that I bought it, I was 0 for the entire morning. First 3 hours, could not catch a fish, and then all of a sudden, the big one started coming in, baby. Boom, boom, on Snake River in Idaho. Beautiful place.
Boom. I want to go to.
Why don't you invite us up there? Like, when are we making our Patriots Talk podcast trip to go fly fishing in the Great Wide Open out there?
Hey, I just don't know if you guys are adapt to the wild. I mean, you guys are city boys. So, I mean, if you guys are up for it, let's rock and roll. I'll take you guys up there and we'll live in the woods.
Nope, we're not going fishing. But we will play. There's a golf course in Coeur d'Alene.
Oh, it's beautiful.
But there's an island green that you have to take a little ferry to. I've seen that on my golf calendars that I sometimes get and put on my wall. Wow. When I do this, I look really old.
You do.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend. I love you.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas to you. Last Christmas, I gave you my heart. The very next day, you took it away. This year, give it to someone special.
That'll do it. All right, that's a wrap for the pod. Thank you so much to everybody all year long who's been joining us here and on Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. You can find it on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Have a great Christmas and enjoy Patriots Bengals. See you next week.